Hey, my internet friends. It's Walking and Talking number 10. Did you notice um, the performativeness with which I opened the video? Did it seem out of character? Do you feel any suspicion? Slight sense of suspicion of me calling you my internet friend? I mean, there's a few of you. I mean, I know a few of you. We know each other personally, but many more of you I haven't met. But I do consider you a friend, at least right now, and that's what counts. I mean, the thing is, you're listening to me. And that's something that I really value in a friendship. And I'm gonna talk to you in a way that I hope is contributing something to your experience. In a positive way. I hope to benefit your well-being. Regardless of whether it seems difficult and hard to listen to, or if it's engaging and you feel your attention wrapped into the video. I feel some slight amount of pressure in my head, just a little bit. And as is usually the case, I can attribute physical discomfort to choices that I've made in the recent past. Namely, I think my choice to use chocolate, specifically cacao nibs, unsweetened cacao nibs, but also some sweetened chocolate as well, as a stimulant in order to maintain a certain energy level throughout the past few days. One could say that I've been on a mild chocolate bender, fueled, mainly by cacao nibs. So it doesn't seem super indulgent. But I think at some point I'm gonna have to detox, and I'll admit I did continue. Continued this what we could call a vice this morning, and ate some cacao nibs, not a huge amount, but in anticipation of walking and talking. Since I value this interaction, and I knew that I'd be interacting with a lot of people, I didn't think it was an appropriate time to detox from the stimulating effects of chocolate yet, which I imagine will just be some kind of period of feeling very low energy and a headache or something like that. Maybe something like if you're a coffee drinker and you tried to stop drinking coffee. I don't drink coffee, and I occasionally drink some tea, but I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine, thus the chocolate having an effect on me. But I think I'm going to try and change the topic away from my personal life and more towards talking, I suppose. It felt pleasant enough to be talking about chocolate, to be honest. And then when I said the last statement about changing the subject over, it was kind of like a detox from having concrete subject matter. Having concrete subject matter, specifically chocolate, being the subject matter. It's as if that is a vice or something. And for me to truly be engaging in the healthiest practices, I should be avoiding these things and focusing on investigating the core apparatuses of my psyche, and by examining my thought process, however unpleasant it may be, or what unflattering traits of my personality it might reveal, what uncomfortable self-conscious feelings may arise. I feel fairly interested in what I just said. I feel interested in the idea that just came out. Because I never thought about it like that before. That I'm aware of. I just now I felt visually stimulated by these yellow and brown leaves on the ground. They jumped out to me. They're marking a difference, a change in the season. Is this concrete subject matter? It seems like a little bit. It seems like a little bit in that direction. It's not purely about thought. I feel glad to be doing this right now. I'm remembering now the feeling that I had earlier in the day. Earlier in the day, I'm remembering that I was reading a lot. I was inside reading something that I was interested in, and it stimulated thought. But a part of me also felt that this reading was an indulgence. No, it could be considered it was a non-fiction book written very recently that I suppose one could say does deal with serious subject matter relevant to humankind, and thus has stimulated a lot of thought. But there, even in that, there I felt as kind of discomfort in viewing myself as consuming media as opposed to actively engaging in thought. I mean, maybe it's not so cut and dry. Maybe the act of reading something that stimulates thought isn't so passive. But I think that walking and talking here is more active and less passive than that. Because when I'm walking and talking, and even like what just happened now, like a few seconds ago, I run up against waves of self-consciousness relating to what I'm saying and what I'm doing and the types of thoughts that I'm expressing. And so I suppose it seems like a process that's gonna perhaps lead to a more accelerated generation of thoughts than reading, because of the way that the self-critiques continually arise. Not continuously, but continually. I think the distinction there, that not continuous in that they persist uninterrupted, but continually in that they arise regularly. And knowing that I'm sharing these thoughts publicly puts some kind of pressure on me to ensure some kind of quality to them. I hope that this is some form of contribution to the world. But even that thought, I wonder if there may be some flaw present in this way of thinking of wanting to make a contribution to the world. Maybe not necessarily a flaw, but I wonder if this is a culturally ingrained notion in me that I should be contributing to the world. Is this a recent phenomena that's especially prevalent in my generation? Is it something innately human? I guess I suspect that it may not be. Hey, look at this. I feel a little angry now. Remember our friend the reishi mushroom that I was holding off on harvesting? I was patiently waiting for it to complete its life cycle and sporulate before I harvested it. Well, somebody's beat me to the chase and harvested it. This one and that one. I don't feel so bad because I believe it was in the last video that I did harvest the portion of the reishi mushroom that had been wrested free from its mycelial base or whatever. You know, it looked like somebody had maybe accidentally kicked it loose, so it was no longer growing. So I harvested that one, and then the other part of it I was going to wait to harvest until it fully sporulated, but I believe that it did sporulate at least a decent amount before somebody got to it. And maybe what I'm feeling, I'm feeling somewhat envious of the other person who harvested it. It's funny. I think that I have a tendency to place a value on foraged plants and mushrooms that may exceed their pure utility by associating cultural capital with them, which I think is very real. That is foraging food and medicinal mushrooms like the reishi the cultural capital of doing that may exceed their actual utility. That is, it may be actually more impressive to talk about harvesting a reishi mushroom and sharing it with somebody than the actual medicinal benefits of it warrant, because it is a kind of specialized knowledge, perhaps, that demonstrates the forager's connection with nature. And independence and resourcefulness. So I think these are impressive qualities, especially within a leftist sphere. But the actual health benefits of the reishi mushroom are pretty hard to quantify, and the demonstrable medicinal benefits are not so clear in the context of a healthy person. That is, you're drinking reishi tea and you know it's supposed to be good for you generally. But you're an already healthy person, so you're not really going to notice anything. That's what I think. Maybe I'm just insensitive. Maybe I'm just not in tune with my body enough to notice the subtle health-giving qualities of the reishi tea. Well, I'm going to make some anyways, because I have some. But I think I just feel envious of the person that harvested that reishi, because I'm assuming that they're capitalizing on it culturally or monetarily by selling it. And maybe this envy or jealousy, it's probably pretty unwarranted, because I would probably also just capitalize on it culturally myself by making reishi tea for somebody else that comes over, and then telling them about it. Anyhow, we can let it's water under the bridge. There's still a very mild pressure in my head. I feel a little bit warm. Feel myself perspirating a little bit. Even though it's a rainy day, it's pretty warm and humid. I guess I'm saying this when I'm describing these conditions to you. I'm also grasping for the opportunity to reroute this monologue into talking about the immediate present more immediately, and not just about the external conditions, but on a more subtle level that has to do with the thought processes going on and the subjectivity that seems to be the source of this monologue. It's interesting to me that I'm getting away. I was about to say an interesting thought. I'm trying to restrain myself and abstain from the interesting thoughts. Don't give in to the temptation to indulge in interesting thoughts. Maybe later. Maybe I can save that thought as a treat for later. After I, really get down to business here and talk about this talking. It's happening. It doesn't feel super acutely focused on what I'm saying right now. Although when I said those words, I felt my focus becoming a little bit more acute when I said what I'm saying right now. I unfurrowed my brow. I observed when I heard myself say the word brow, and the way that my voice rose when I said it. Brow. And I felt a self-consciousness upon repeating the word brow and expressing my own observation of hearing myself say the word brow. And the self-consciousness, I think, had to do with associating what I was saying with a kind of artsiness that I find unappealing. Artsiness, or maybe artiness, but probably artsiness. There's a little bit distinction between artiness and artsiness. Artsiness, with the S in there, is more pejorative in my mind, because its relationship to cutesiness or crafts, as in arts and crafts, and as a sort of I'm trying to think of a better word than banality. of of something that we would describe as artsy. Maybe facile. It's a good word. That's a pretty good word. But I felt that feeling in association with saying, with talking about when I investigated me noticing myself saying the word brow and then repeating the way that I said brow like a few times, and perhaps I judged that action as being a slightly contrived attempt to like transcend everyday reasoning, and so then I felt critical of myself for having this this already assumed agenda that I may have not been aware of as an agenda of wanting to do something out of the ordinary mode of normal speech, and to make it aberrant or special or unique in some way. And when I think about that, that feels a little misguided to me. But the way that I'm speaking now feels a little more feels a little more unassuming, straightforward, and down to earth, or something like that. More pragmatic in a way. Even though I've definitely entered this this realm of being extremely reflexive by this point in the video. That is, even if I'm speaking in a very straightforward, logical way, it's the mere existence of this incident in the past of having perhaps effortfully attempted to transcend normal everyday speech, that exists, like everything I'm saying now in effect can be traced back to that utterance. And it's almost if it vulgarizes everything that I'm gonna say from now on. Or to put it another way, I'm very aware now of the unusefulness of what I'm saying, or the fact that it's at this point it just is very removed from a normal mode of communication that is like I've noticed. I'm aware of this span of time having elapsed now in which everything I've said has been reflexive and referring to what just previously happened. And I feel a little self-conscious of that being a thing, of this reflexiveness being a thing that could be tiring. But as I said, that thing, it feels interesting that even if this is this ongoing like reflexive process that stays the same, and I can accuse it of becoming tiresome, that even within that I can contain the critique of it within itself. But then again, I'm even having said that, I feel still a little self-critical of having this of this being a clever device or something. You know, of just relying on the cleverness of this device, as opposed to having a type of content that I could imagine to be more authentic or heartfelt or something like that. I think it seems like I'm measuring everything based on authenticity, and using authenticity as being a benchmark of success, or a value that I'm striving towards. And this is always, I think, always a useful thing to be able to rearrange a negative statement or a negative critique into a positive statement. That is, if I'm stating what I perceive to be negative qualities of what I'm doing, it's useful, I think, to be able to rearrange that my perception into pointing out the positive aspects that I value and want to be present in what I'm doing. And have to give credit to my housemate Sam for reminding me of this the other night. He's the person that you met in episode 1. There's never mind. I noticed an external thing that I felt interested in, I was gonna point it out, but then I just wanted to just let it go. I feel kind of saturated with external information sometimes, but even that seems like an idea that was given to me, like the idea of information saturation in the information age is one that I can recall hearing other people say. And if they hadn't said that, if I hadn't given me that idea, would I still judge the amount of information as being saturating? And also, how do you even quantify information? Is it the number of words that you read or hear somebody say? Is it all words? What about the images? Is it the number of moving pixels you see? And if you're in the quote unquote real life seeing things, isn't the sensory information just as just as large and voluminous? Like, for instance, when I'm looking at this canal here, the resolution of the light that's entering my eyes is far greater than any YouTube video. So I could quantify this as being much more information rich than any YouTube video. But we talk about being this being a information rich environment with the internet. I don't know. I don't know how you quantify that. Anyhow, this word anyhow jumped into my head as being an indication that I'm judging the previous train of thought as having gone off on a tangent, and anyhow being the indicator that now I'm returning to the original point that I was trying to make, or the original subject matter, which in my mind is talking more directly about talking itself. But as of course I recently mentioned, even that mechanism, to me, if I think about it as such, could be starting to wear thin. I mean, I'm continuing to talk, and I'm glad that I'm continuing to talk. I'm valuing this experience right now. And I feel glad that I'm having it, and I don't really desire to be having it anything else. I feel distracted right now by having walked past this arrangement. There's a cup of coffee, there's an opened can of sweet corn, and there's a bag of dark bark chocolate snacking thins, 80% dark chocolate. And you know from earlier in this video my relationship to chocolate, and you may understand that there's this temptation to grab that chocolate back there, but you can observe now that I am I'm plainly walking away from the chocolate, exercising discipline. It doesn't feel too difficult. I don't actually feel a craving for that chocolate right now, to be honest. I think even because I'm doing this right now, because I'm walking and talking, it seems to be it seems to put me in a different mind frame than normal life, where perhaps in normal life I would be a little more impulsive. But also, to be honest, the way that arrangement of stuff was sitting there makes me think that whoever the owner of it may return for it. And I don't like to take things away from other people, but I definitely do like to utilize things that would otherwise be wasted. And so I think if by the time I return along this path that chocolate was still there, I would certainly take it and enjoy it. Maybe share it with somebody else, maybe not. And yeah, I think I'm just going to continue walking away from the chocolate now, and we'll see what happens by the time I get back. Maybe somebody else will have picked it up. I wonder if that corn, that sweet corn, if somebody's eating that, or if they were going to use it as bait, fish bait. I don't know. I don't know if sweet corn makes good fish bait. Maybe it's been sitting there since last night. It's sprinkling slightly, and this is the first time it's rained during an episode of Walking and Talking, I believe. But what am I doing here? Why do I keep describing to you these external things? Maybe then even when I said that, I felt kind of silly. Like this whole judgment of against describing external phenomena, and of valuing, focusing on my internal experience. I felt really silly about that just then. As if it seems, I guess the word that comes to mind is pretentious or something. But I kind of feel a need to clarify that a little, because usually for me the word pretentious is kind of a foil for a lot of hidden judgment.
Beyond pissed about it.
So why is it that on one hand I express this aversion towards talking about my external circumstances and preference for talking about my internal experience, but then at the same time I feel that I began to feel embarrassed about that. And maybe it has to do with here's looking at a couple of turtles under the water. They just stuck their heads up. It feels really refreshing to me to watch turtles floating in the water while it's raining. It makes me wish that I was swimming. Not necessarily in this water. I think it has to do with recognizing behaviors that I've repeated in the past, surfacing again in the present, and wondering if I'm consciously involved in deciding to behave this way, or if I'm just acting unconsciously out of a pattern. But there may not be any real distinction between those things. There's a loud scream over there. It was just one scream. It was pretty loud. Definitely sounded like a human woman screaming. Oh, I can see the person. I think okay. I think she's okay. You can see her in the middle of the screen, in the screen. I think she's just screaming. Or I think she just went somewhere to scream. I think I'll go ahead and respect her privacy. But my suspicion is that she sought out a relatively secluded place just to be able to scream and release some kind of feelings or energy. Which is something that I can definitely empathize with. I think walking and talking, it doesn't exactly feel like catharsis to me. No, I don't think so, because it doesn't really like peak into any kind of like physical or visceral expression. Like the arc of the energy level is usually not a very wide range of energy. It's like it's relatively consistent. I mean, it has its arcs, but nothing like that of an action movie or anything like that. I'm remembering now talking recently about wondering if I'm just acting in accordance with my behavior patterns of the past, or if I'm consciously involved in directing directing my behavior. And I'm not really sure if there's a distinction, because it could be the case that my even my own consciousness is shaped to by some extent by my behaviors in the past and patterns and such. And even I think having something that's recognizable as a consciousness or an identity may in fact be the result of a pattern or like a feedback loop, as Douglas Hofstadter would put it. And so the question between of whether I'm behaving via pattern or consciously involved may be an unnecessary dichotomy. It seems that I have a desire to be consciously involved and to be exercising my own agency and be in charge of my life. It seems like in order to avoid suffering, to whatever extent it's possible, requires acting with agency, or at least feeling like you're acting with agency. You know, to change the situation of your life to one that results in less suffering. But where's the distinction between acting with agency and acting out of habit? Maybe there is a habit that at certain times you view a habit as unhealthy, as causing suffering for yourself, but you continue to do it, and maybe in the moment of reiterating that habit that you ordinarily consider as being unhealthy, maybe in that moment you feel as if, or at least you interpret your action as exercising your own agency and not just acting out of habit. And then in other times when you reflect upon that action, you may interpret it as having resulted out of habit. I'm noticing my volume of speaking is not very high. It's relatively low, and the rate is kind of slow. And I notice the pressure in my head a little bit. As my energy level is not as high as it could be. But it's not really important to talk about what could be right now. Because I mean, for me to consciously raise my energy level might involve, like veering off this path and like finding a coffee shop and drinking coffee or something like that, or actually, running back and picking up that chocolate and eating the chocolate or something like that. So I suppose that those are options. But I'm definitely going to choose against them and choose to continue just walking on this path. And either accepting my energy the way that it is, or seeing if I can, just through a conscious effort, somehow consciously increase my energy level without any external substances. I wonder if I can do it just by willpower alone. Like I can start walking a little faster, and then maybe by this process of willfully pushing my body a little slightly harder, somehow my body will kick into a higher state of metabolism or something like that, and I'll start talking with a little bit more energy, and maybe the pressure in my head will go away or something like that. I don't know. I'm not gonna hold my breath for that, but I am gonna keep trying to walk a little bit faster and see what happens. There's definitely a distinct difference in my environment that indicates the changing of the seasons. I felt oddly self-conscious of my choice of language. Hearing myself talk and judging my choice of language as sounding somewhat educated or something. And it's true, I'm somewhat educated. Maybe there's there might be some kind of desire to really just sound like a totally normal person, speaking in everyday parlance. See, I've done it again. In stating my desire to talk in everyday parlance, I use the word parlance, which totally defeats that goal. I felt some humor in that last sentence. I'm wondering if the reflexive kind of like statement by statement progression of thoughts here, it isn't a little bit choppy or unfocused in the way that by continually saying something about the last thing I said, it's not actually forming a long and continuous thought, but it's keeps jumping from thought to thought rapidly, even if there is a somewhat coherent progression from one thought to the next. nonetheless, it is moving from one thought to the next. If I keep bringing up a judgment or observation about the last thing that I said. But in noticing this thought, I'm thinking that I have actually completed a somewhat longer thought that had continuity for at least a few seconds, and it wasn't so choppy. And I'm now just started to like meta analyze that, and it doesn't feel I don't feel a discontinuity about that. I feel a reasonable amount of continuity, and I feel like even the thing that I'm saying right now it does feel somehow contiguous with what I said maybe even like 40 seconds ago, maybe 45 seconds ago. And so that kind of allays my fear. I think that's the right word, allays my fear of speaking in a choppy, disorganized way. And is it possible for me to continue after like a slight pause like that and continue the feel of continuity? It seems like it. I think I notice a sense of continuity now, even after that break, and even after that much shorter break. That now that I'm talking has almost disappeared from my consciousness. It's like the break is now just a memory, and probably wouldn't even be a significant memory except for the fact that I have continued to reference it in this sentence that I'm speaking now. Which that sentence felt interesting to me, and felt like a kind of like there was some discovery involved in speaking that sentence, because like somehow it seemed to like pull together something from the past and reveal it as the past as being the past, and to then like somehow transform the past into the present in a way, or to I have this feeling about a sentence that I said in like within the preceding minute or so, about it being having a certain elegance or acrobaticness to it, or something like that, about moving my consciousness from the past and revealing the past to be the past, while refocusing my consciousness on the present, I suppose. But now that I am continuing to talk about that sentence, it seems like it's ripe. There's a ripe opportunity now to just let go of that whole concept in order to actually reiterate the aspect of that sentence that I did find beautiful in the first place, which was its quality of redirecting my attention to the present. And the current sentence, I don't know if it has quite yet done that, but just as I was saying that, then that's when I think it happened for me. That, when I kind of somewhat paradoxically, when I was saying that the current sentence was still referencing the past and not bringing me into the present, that's when my attention did move more acutely into the present, and so it had the effect that I seem to be continuously finding reward in. And I'm remembering now how earlier in the video I seem to be having concerns about referencing external phenomena or referencing past events of my life or just surface level conditions, and having more occurrences of self-consciousness arise. I'm remembering that and contrasting it with the more immediate past, in which there are some things happening in my talking that I found really interesting, and they seem to avoid unpleasant self-consciousness and avoid external phenomena, but also avoid a kind of contrived method of like willfully exalting my activity beyond normal experience. Another way to put that would be that right now what I'm saying feels kind of naturally exalted, but and I feel a sense of I think I feel some sense of exaltation right now. That is, I feel I suppose I feel some kind of difference about the present state than about what I conceive to be my normal state, but it doesn't feel like I'm willfully bringing that about. It feels like it's kind of just happening to me, but at the same time what I'm saying and doing right now feels completely natural. In the sense that I'm kind of recognizing this reality that I'm in right now as being just a normal one. But somehow also in an exalted way. I'm not sure quite how to express this, but I wonder if the feeling might be coming across to anyway. Maybe not exactly in the content what I'm saying, but maybe in the way that I'm saying it. Maybe something of this feeling is getting transmitted. Like a feeling totally normal and and at home in the normal mundane reality, but also maybe feeling some kind of sense of relief or relief. Something different, like some kind of freshness or newness about this experience. I stopped walking right just now, and I've been looking right at this tree trunk, and that optical illusion is occurring where the tree trunk looks like it's receding from me, even though I'm standing still. And of course the tree trunk is not actually moving in relation to me, but having been walking continuously for a while and having my gaze on the path in front of me, having stopped now is that optical illusion that you might be familiar with, where it appears like it's receding. And I wonder actually if that occurred for you at all. If you've been actually watching this video continuously, with your eyes on the screen continuously. Thought I saw some animal move here. Seems like it would be a good day to see some amphibians. I don't know. Maybe I don't feel exalted right now. I don't know. Maybe I just feel the plain old pain of existence right now. But maybe it's a matter of interpretation. Like I can still, I feel I feel sensations in my body, and I could interpret them as pain. Like, the slight pressure in my head, the slight feeling of weight, the weight of my body, and then maybe maybe there's a very slight tiredness in my legs. But it almost feels like an option to interpret it that way. As if I may have some amount of choice as to whether I suffer from those sensations or not. I mean, I can imagine certain other sensations that I would have less choice in, like if somebody were jabbing a sharp object into me or something, I would probably immediately react to try and stop it. Or if I couldn't stop that, then I would probably suffer from the pain of it. So maybe it's a matter of degree. But I guess I'll say, I can say that in my present experience, it seems like if I don't exert any effort or something like that, maybe there'd be some possibility of turning the physical sensations that I'm having into an experience of suffering. But I feel like I don't have to do that right now. And I feel like I'm able to maintain the mood that I'm in, which I don't know whether to describe it as positive or something more neutral. I'm also just now I'm like putting my hand on my scalp like this. I'm putting my fingertips on my scalp and just massaging it a little. I guess I'm just kind of enjoying this feeling and wonder if there's some chance that it might somehow alleviate this feeling of pressure in my head. I don't really know. But it feels kind of pleasant just to do. You know, maybe I could rationalize this by saying that maybe by moving my scalp around like this, it'll stimulate blood flow and alleviate this feeling of pressure. I don't know. I guess so I guess that was me. In addition to exerting like a mental effort to not experience my sensations as suffering, maybe I also exerted a physical attempt at something that might have some chance of actually alleviating the sensation in question, or getting maybe if I say alleviate, then I'm admitting a negative perception of it. Maybe I should just say that it would get rid of it or eliminate it, which doesn't have any judgment attached. Nonetheless, I suppose that my ideal would be a physical state where no major physical sensations are making themselves apparent to me, which I can remember feeling like that during much of the last video. And I remember trying to appreciate that rare state as much as possible. This is the scenic part of walking and talking. There's a blue heron. There's the dam. being around all this water feels somehow refreshing to me. It's not that I'm actually getting wet, but just being surrounded by wetness. Feels like a welcome thing. I wouldn't mind it if it rained a little bit harder. It's raining so slightly now that I can barely feel the raindrops. And I can see these aquatic plants here. And the fish swimming around. And it's almost like the effect of having an aquarium, or I suppose that having an aquarium is like bringing some of this effect into one's home. But, you know, I'm really diverging here. What I'm actually going to do is stand really close to the dam and turn in circles. Because I really like the auditory effect for me. And if you are listening in stereo, on stereo headphones or with stereo speakers, you can probably experience this too. And I'm going to accelerate the effect by just spinning the camera around shortly. So if you're prone to getting dizzy, this might be a good time to look away from the monitor. But if you're listening in stereo, it'll be a good time to listen closely to the stereo effect. All right, here we go. Alright. I've wound up the string that's attached to the camera, and now it's gonna spin. It's gonna spin out in a moment. Just shortly. Alright, here we go. Alright, I hope that sounded cool. Maybe it would be alright to not talk for a while and just walk for a while. Maybe I'll try it and see what it feels like. It's actually pretty interesting. I mean, I'm not someone who's unaccustomed to silence, even for very long periods, but in the context of walking and talking, it actually feels like slightly jarring. So I'm going to do it a little bit more. I can actually feel myself consciously not talking. Here's some more, and see if you can consciously be aware of the absence of talking. I'm continuing to be aware of you. And I wonder if you can feel that. I wonder if you can feel me continuing to be aware of you, and like the connection is still there for me, even in those moments when I wasn't talking. See if you can feel my awareness of you when I'm not talking, and feel a certain connection between us without the talking. I think in the last one I maybe actually lost the awareness for a moment, or lost the connection in that my mind started to drift off to thinking about other stuff besides our immediate interaction. So I'm just going to try again here to not talk for a little while, and see if it feels to me like the connection is maintained, and you can do the same if you want. Yeah, thus far I think it felt maintained. And I felt a need to jump in and start talking again, just to end that silence in a state that felt like a success for me, and just set up another one. And maybe this will be a little bit longer silence, and we'll both see if in our experience it feels like there's some kind of connection being maintained. I think I felt some kind of connection maintained. I'll admit I did have some thoughts that very much that were directly related to this silence, but then and the silence inspired ideas in me, or I had ideas about other applications of the silence, and so I was imagining future things a little bit towards the end of that one, and that's okay. I don't necessarily. I don't know. Maybe I will try again and consciously try to keep my mind in a place where it's aware of the connection between you and me again. I'm going to start over because that guy on the motorcycle was funny to me. All right, here we go. Yeah, I think I at least felt, I at least continued to be like aware of that silence and at least thinking about our shared experience of it. Here's a cool 2-layered rock. Look at that. That's cool. I gotta put this rock somewhere. I'm putting it up there. It's funny that that now we can have these intentional silences in walking and talking. The whole premise of which is continuous talking and no silence. But it's kind of as if I've talked enough and established talking as the basis that now I can introduce some intentional silences just as a continuation of the content of talking, as if they're not like so much silence as silence, but like silence as a part of talking, and just using them as a feature of talking. I wonder if that chocolate is still going to be there when I get back. You know, most people, I think, won't pick up food that they would see and on the sidewalk and eat it, even if, you know, it's perfectly in a package, it's in a reclosable package that was closed. But according to the general taboo of it, or maybe they're also like me and they wonder if perhaps the owner of the chocolate is going to return for it. I had in the last silence I had I wondered what I would say next, and that was associated with a very mild anxiety about the quality of this video. But then I kind of had the opposite feeling of just relaxing myself and not worrying about the quality of this video. Maybe that relaxation is a product of having done this enough times now that I feel confident that it's going to be okay in the end, despite whatever worries I might have along the way. I'm not what I was thinking to say before I started to say it was that I was going to say, I'm not sure what to say next, and I felt a slight annoyance associated with that thought. Maybe a slight annoyance of feeling obligated to continue talking, and I recognize very plainly that having the feeling of annoyance is I'm more prone to that if I am feeling a lower physical energy or pressure in my head, and it seems really important to be aware of how my physical state predisposes me towards certain emotions, and then how those emotions in turn affect my thought process. Because especially in interacting with other people, it seems unfair to other people for me to be unaware of how my physical state is affecting my feelings and thus my thought process. It just seems like that's going to hinder communication and like not contribute towards having successful communication of surrounding our shared reality, because it's as if by being unaware of how my physical state is affecting my perceptions, it's as if I'm more trapped in my own subjective reality, but mistaking my subjective reality for being the objective one, and not being able to empathize with the subjective reality of the other person, and not being able to have a sense of a shared reality. I mean, it's possible that the person I'm interacting with is feeling this same or similar physical state and feelings, and so then maybe their thought process and perceptions would be affected in a similar way, and so we would be agreeing upon our realities and feeling a sense of shared reality. But even that almost seems like it would just be reinforcing our mutual delusion of our subjective reality being the objective one, and because it agrees with the other person's reality, but both of us are unaware of how our physical states, our bodily sensations are affecting our perceptions. Maybe you've noticed in another person or noticed in yourself an inconsistency in how you perceive the world, or in other words, moodiness. So maybe one day you have a very positive outlook on your own life and the world, and then the next day you have a very negative outlook, and it's as if reality has changed. But of course it's not objective reality that has changed. It's just your perception has changed due to your physical state. Your maybe your energy level, your rate of physiological arousal, your neurotransmitters being affected by your biological state. And so maybe you feel in a bad mood, and you have a negative outlook upon yourself or the world or people around you, and you might notice that you felt differently the day before. You felt the opposite way, but in your negative state, you perceive your previous perception as being the false one, and your present one to be true. And it's like there is subjective truth to that. Like, I feel like I've drifted into some kind of didactic role here that I don't feel is so useful. Maybe I'm just thinking that what I'm describing here might be totally familiar to you and nothing new. And maybe you don't really need any reminder of this. Maybe. Or at least maybe what I've already said is reminder of enough, and it would be most useful to just continue on talking here without using this subject as a mechanism to fill space, a mechanism to continue talking without actually being fully aware of my own bodily state and how it's influencing my own thought processes right now. Maybe it could even be possible that my physical state right now, that of having a slightly low energy level, is making me more inclined to use concrete subject matter as a kind of crutch in order to move through this process without actually confronting my experience head on, because it may be unpleasant. In fact, I think I could describe my physical state, the feeling of having a slight pressure in my head, as being a little bit unpleasant. Earlier I was talking about having the choice to not suffer from it, and I think there's still truth to that. Maybe it's possible to acknowledge this feeling as being unpleasant, but to not actually be suffering from it. I'm not sure. Oh, there's very strange and gross looking unidentified object here. I don't know what it is, but it kind of looks like the dung of an animal that ate another mammal, like a mouse or something. Or like if a fox ate a mouse and then pooped it out and there's hair there. It's like kind of looks like hairy dung. I'm gonna stop here soon and drink some water, and that should contribute something to my physical well-being. It's very humid and I'm sweating some. I'm remembering how last night I was watching YouTube videos, and I watched some that had very high production value, and starred a person who seemed to conform to standards of beauty to such an extreme degree, and to be have their appearance groomed, makeup and such to such a degree that it seemed as if they were making a caricature of human perfection and youthful beauty. And the high production values of this YouTube video exaggerated these characteristics a lot, to the extent that I felt uncomfortable watching it. And I'm not sure if I think that discomfort relates to my self image and my knowledge that I'm not using high production values in the videography or in my personal grooming, really. And but also drew discomfort to the my physical appearance, aspects of which I can't really control. Some aspects I can control to a certain extent, and but other aspects I can't control, short of getting plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery. And I wondered about the effects of viewing media that contain that feature people who conform to an ideal of youth and beauty, and those characteristics are accentuated by the production and I guess that my general feeling is that type of media is very alluring when you're watching it, and stimulating when you're watching it, but then is in the long run unhealthful. For your own mental health and self-consciousness, and the way that you feel about your own body and appearance. And then, I wondered if by using by producing a more naturalistic depiction of my body in the times when I do depict my body, which is rare in this video, if there could be some kind of antidote to that. But because my own self-image, or my judgment of my own appearance is negative in comparison to people who are media icons of youthful beauty. But when I am not involved in that world and not consuming that media, I don't necessarily have such a negative self-image, a negative perception of my appearance. And in fact, of course, when I'm engaged in something like walking and talking, and also maybe to some extent with sitting and smiling, when I'm engaged in making these videos, I'm generally just not thinking about my appearance so much. Actually, that's not true. That's not really true. I guess I am thinking about my appearance but maybe there's less evaluating my appearance going on. I don't think it's ever totally absent, though. In fact, I'd be surprised if there's even been really a day of my adult life, and including my adolescent life and probably much of childhood, where I don't have some sort of evaluation of my appearance, which is probably usually negative. But I will say that it's not something that plagues me. But I'm just saying this because I wonder if this experience resonates with yours. And I wonder what it will be like to age a lot and have my body deteriorate. And I wonder if I'll envy youth. Walking up this hill, I feel more aware of the heaviness of my body. And a little bit more aware of the pressure in my head. But I'm going to try and walk a little faster. Anyways. My evaluation of this video right now, or this part of the video, is of it having a lull in energy and interesting content. I suppose that means that I'm thinking about the past parts of this video and other videos, and judging them as being more interesting. Here's some mullein. I think we talked about this plant already in a previous video, but so I guess I won't talk about mullein right now. Mullein the plant. It's if you're curious about it, it's spelled Mullein. Here's a tower that holds up power lines, and here's a sign on the tower that says high voltage above, do not climb, and it shows a symbol of a person falling with a bolt of electricity going towards them. I'll show you close up. And I'm going to obey the sign. I'm just gonna maybe let the energy level and the rate of this part of walking and talking be as it is. I mean, that is to say more accurately that I'm accepting it as it is. What's this? Oh, it's like a mocker nut hickory or a bitter nut hickory nut or something. Whoa, wait. Oh, cool. This hickory nut is cracked open, revealing the nut meat. I'll see if I can open it all the way. Oh, it's got some... I think there's been some worms in here. But you can see how this nut meat looks a little bit like a pecan. Hickory nuts taste a lot like pecans. I'm actually surprised at how large the nut meat was in that nut. Yeah, my energy level feels kind of low, and normally I see that as a problem. Because generally I want these videos to be engaging and maybe even stimulating, but now that I think about it, maybe they don't necessarily need to be stimulating or engaging, because if I'm being stimulated by chocolate, and eventually it results in a crash of some sort, and I'm experiencing a little bit of that right now. And so if I keep stimulating you with stimulating walking and talking videos, I wonder if it could have the same effect. So maybe it's okay to not stimulate your energy level right now. And to not develop in you any kind of dependence on media. But that's almost like saying, well, I don't know. I could extend that to any sort of positive quality that this video might have, and say that by providing that positive quality through this video, maybe I'm developing in the viewers a dependency on these videos for whatever quality or whatever need that might be fulfilling, and thus thus weakening your ability to fulfill that need in a more self-sufficient way. But if that is true, then logically there wouldn't be a reason to make any video, you know? Like, I fail to see. I guess I'm failing to see a reason for making a video that is intentionally lacking in every positive quality that I can think of. But in some ways, that could be what I'm doing. As in, I am intentionally making a type of YouTube video that is markedly lacking in all the qualities of YouTube videos that are generally associated with successful or popular media. This plant smells really good. And I'm not sure what plant it is. But I've noticed its good smellingness before. In a way, I feel a relief to not know the name of this plant. Because that way I don't have the option to capitalize on the cultural capital of knowing the fact of the name of this plant. I can't impress you by knowing the name of this plant. I can just tell you that the smell of it is very pleasing to me. And knowing the name of this plant, I don't think would change how it smells. It wouldn't change the usefulness of it for me, nor for you, I don't think. Because you can look at the video and see what the plant looks like. And if it happens to grow where you are, maybe you'll recognize it, but nonetheless, you can smell whatever plants are around you if you want. And if they smell good to you, then good. I could tell you the name of this plant. I know the name of this plant. I don't know if I want to tell you though. Honestly, I don't know if knowing the name of this plant has ever helped me in any practical way. Other than the cultural capital of knowing the name and impressing somebody by having knowledge. I think I've used this plant once. I think I've eaten the root of this plant once. But to be honest, in this context, I don't really feel like the effort of digging up this plant feels worth the experience of eating the root of it right now. I don't know, maybe it would be. Maybe maybe just the effort involved in digging it up and the sensory tactile experience of doing that would contribute to the experience of eating the root in a way that would contribute a certain wholesomeness to my experience while eating it. I guess I do find that to be the case with foraging often. So I don't know. I guess I'll tell you in case you're interested. It's called evening primrose. I just had to rationalize a little bit before I told you that. I had to rationalize whether knowing the name of the plant might have actual utility for you and actually increase your happiness, or I wondered if by displaying to you that the knowledge about this plant that I have, if it would invoke in you a sense of inferiority of not having that knowledge, and whatever other like cultural implications there might be around having this knowledge. But I suppose that if by displaying this knowledge I did invoke in you a sense of inferiority, or another way to put it, if you felt a sense of admiration for this knowledge, meaning that you ascribe a value to that knowledge, then now the knowledge is yours. The name of the plant, evening primrose, and if you feel a need to further internalize that knowledge, you can look up evening primrose on Wikipedia or whatever, or that one botany website. And then you can get a picture of it in your mind, and then maybe you'll come across it in your life sometime, and then when you recognize it in your life, that'll further cement this knowledge in you and internalize it, and then you'll be in full possession of this knowledge to which you attribute some value, and you yourself can then capitalize on its cultural implications. I had the thought that I feel hungry, but then when I investigated that, I don't know if I actually feel hungry or or if I just feel really low energy. I walked over here to investigate this plant that I thought might be wild buckwheat, this dried vine, but I don't think it is. It's this other plant that has this triangular leaf, and it has, ow, it's really spiny and pokey. It has these berries that are turning blue. Will some foraging expert bestow upon me the knowledge of the name of this plant so that I might increase my store of cultural capital? And if such that if ever a day comes when I'm walking around the woods with a woman who I feel attracted to, such that I might impress her with my vast store of, we can call it, of we can even call it subcultural capital in the form of plant knowledge. When I proposed the preceding scenario, I think I felt a increased appreciation for my present scenario. I'll just leave it at that. I think I feel in these surroundings an alleviation of certain anxieties that I might feel if I were just in my home. Not a total relief of every anxiety, but some of them. I don't know how well you can see it, but this plant called Devil's Walking Stick is really growing really tall. It's almost like a tree. I mean, it's basically a small tree. I think that might have grown all this year, all in 1 year. The sky is a little bit darker, and I'm hearing a little bit of a rustling in the trees, hearing the wind rustle the leaves, which makes me feel a little bit hopeful that it might rain a little harder and cool off the temperature. Here I am. I'm just skimming here on the surface level of things. I have a desire to dig in deeper into my subjective experience. I feel like there's other thoughts are coming along here that I didn't say because I felt self-conscious about them being a repetition of thought process that I've had already in walking and talking. But even this that I said, I know I've done that before. I've done that same action before. Very, very much, I think the same mechanisms are repeating a lot. But it's never exactly the same. I have a slight concern of not being fully in it, not performing at the best level. But man, I don't know if I ever have been. I don't know if it's actually ever possible to be at an ideal. I have memories, or I don't know how accurate the memories are of performing at a level that I deemed to be ideal in the past. But I don't know. I wonder if these incidents aren't idealized in my mind. Always there's still some problem present. I just now in this silence, my thoughts drifted very far off. They in fact drifted very far away from walking and talking, and I was just thinking about somewhat unrelated events in the future. I mean, they are kind of related. And there was a linking thought between the present, walking and talking, and then this more abstract thought about the future. But I found myself thinking about pragmatic concerns that are quite remote from what's happening right now. Perhaps to a degree that's uncommon within the framework of walking and talking. during this gap, I've been thinking about what to say. Maybe it's okay to have a kind of gap where I'm thinking about what to say. I guess not really though, because in the gap I never actually arrive at the right thing to say. You know, when I come back in, it's just like I'm just saying something, and it doesn't have a special significance. But I think I'm noticing my my tone now to be slightly negatively affected. To be expressing a vague downtroddenness. And I'm sure that is related. I'm sure that's related to my relatively low energy level. But I want to stay completely in touch with the way that my body feels right now, so that I'm not having this low energy level affecting my thought process in a way that I'm not aware of, I suppose. But at the same time, I don't want to just be concentrating so heavily on these physical sensations that my thought process becomes like constipated or too narrowly like limited. There's this episode of Walking and Talking probably overall has a certain constructiveness for me personally, merely in the fact that I've geographically isolated myself from the sorts of stimuli that I might otherwise be tempted to turn to evade experiencing the unpleasant physical sensations, but which would over the long haul would just kind of put off the unpleasant experience, or possibly even exacerbate it by the negative side effects, or not even side effects, but just effects of whatever stimuli that I chose to either alter my physiological state, mental state, or distract myself from it. So, for example, I could eat more chocolate or something sweet to perhaps temporarily alleviate / distract myself from feeling pressure in my head, or I could watch internet media, consume internet media in order to distract myself from it. But it could be the case that continuing to indulge those impulses might exacerbate this feeling in the long run. I'm going to drink some water now. I'm trying to accept and feel okay about the prospect of this video being of a low energy level. And not be afraid of it being boring. And of course, boring is a judgment that diverts attention away from our subjective experience by creating, I think, a false idea of an external thing as having this inherent quality of being boring. And so as such, I don't exactly feel a pressure now to really like pick up my rate of talking or to totally avoid the gaps. But I also recognize that, you know, I can't escape this bodily feeling by talking really slow or not talking at all, or walking really slow, or even like sitting down and resting. I think I'd feel very uncomfortable. I mean, I would feel uncomfortable because I would not be making this video. I mean, especially if I was sitting down and resting or like falling asleep or something. I have no interest in making a video that includes myself sleeping. I don't think, at least not now. There's a silence there, and it's like I am feeling I'm not feeling a very fast flow of ideas here, or a vast flow of thought or speech that might, and so this might create a tendency towards silence. But then even in the silence, it's not as if I'm actually resting mentally in any way, because in the silence I just feel an increasing urgency and needing to say something, to, you know, continue generating content here. My perception of this video so far, especially of the arc of it, is of having discovered some things that seemed very interesting in the first half of the video, especially after the first half hour or so. But then in the in the second half of the video, maybe even starting before that, not having not feeling any sense of discovery in what I've been saying, which seems like I suppose I would prefer, all things being equal, to have a sense of discovery. There's this chipmunk keeps running out into the middle of the trail. Two of them, at least two chipmunks. They're not visible now, but they keep running out into the trail, and then when a biker goes past, they run away. But they hold really still in between movements. It's like they're either perfectly still or they're darting very quickly. That's something that I enjoy. There goes one. That's something I enjoy about chipmunks and squirrels. I feel still feel a sense of a slight sense of disappointment in my performance in this video, but that feeling sits within a certain trust in the process and a commitment to carrying out the process in a way that's regardless of my physical state. Although I don't have a strict schedule of when I make these videos. So if I were really feeling very low energy, then I would probably be less likely to make the video. Because I suppose that, you know, on one hand, I'm trying to exercise a certain kind of objective rigor in continuing to walk and talk and to express whatever feelings I have and to acknowledge whatever bodily sensations I might have, and to try to be somewhat equanimous about my experience, and to allow for myself to feel unpleasant feelings, and to trust that it's perfectly acceptable for this process to include those things. On the other hand, I don't wish to make a video in which I feel totally out of control of my emotions and thoughts. Just because that's it would be a very unpleasant experience for me, assuming that this is a kind of out of control where I feel like I'm spiraling into a cycle of negativity or something like that. But also that having that experience and recording it and publishing it might have effects on you, negative effects on you, Possibly. I don't know. I wonder if it. I wonder if it would be possible for it to also have beneficial or educational aspects to it, to be able to witness a person going into a negative spiral of thought and emotion, and just over the course of 4 hours, see how it plays out, and perhaps learn something about emotion and self-control and such. But I think that if I were feeling especially emotionally unstable one day, then I probably would be inclined not to make a walking and talking video, and instead administer some kind of self-care. Seems like the wise thing to do. Though, like, part of me now feels a little curious as to what I might find out if I was feeling, very like physically agitated and emotionally unstable, if I did in fact go ahead and do a full walking and talking video in that state, and with the full likelihood that I'd spiral into negativity, that likelihood being increased by this practice of talking with no stimulus to distract me for an extended period of time. It's being essentially alone with my thoughts for an extended period of time. Part of me feels curious if I allowed a negative spiral like that to just occur full on within this framework. What it would be like, because yes, it would be I imagine it to be an extremely unpleasant experience. In another sense, it seems like it might be a contained kind of experience. And like out here walking, it's not like I would be making any kind of interactions that are harmful, except potentially the interaction with you the internet viewer, if I did indeed publish it. But since this isn't a live video, I'd have the option to not publish it if I felt like it was going to be harmful. And I guess I see the possibility that maybe this, maybe I could have a negative spiral, but at some point it would stop. Like I don't think I would go infinitely down into the abyss, and at some point I would turn around. Look, I love this thing. This is like just a bunch of vines over here that have naturally turned into like kind of a shelter. Like if it were raining, I could lie down under there and maybe sleep and like stay relatively dry. And it's just like naturally occurred from vines growing on there and leaves accumulating. It's, it's like a natural lean-to. And if I, it's like allowing a spiral into the abyss to just occur with nothing to mitigate it. Could perhaps be a beneficial experience in the long run. I wonder, maybe. It seems like some people actually purposely induce such experiences by using like ayahuasca or something. Like if I read about people taking ayahuasca, it sounds like it's a horrific experience. At least sometimes. Like something of unimaginable pain. But then they learn something from it and emerge from it feeling refreshed and having some kind of new lease on life. I mean, at least that's what they feel like. I don't know how well that, I don't know how much that becomes integrated into their actual life, or if it's just like a matter of their subjective experience, but their daily behavior continues unaffected, but through a different perspective. I don't know. I'm postulating this hypothetical scenario but I don't think I'd actually seek out being emotionally unstable in the first place. I generally try to practice self-care to the extent that I maintain some level of emotional stability, and I think I prefer it that way. But I suppose it's just to say that if I do someday find myself in a place of agitation and emotional instability, which I've certainly found myself in that state many times in the past. It might be interesting to just face it head on in a contained framework, like walking and talking. But here I've been for several minutes now, talking about a hypothetical idea, and not actually talking about the present reality, which, I guess I got there from talking about my present experience, but it went off the tracks in a hypothetical idea. And so I feel I could be missing an opportunity here to actually be learning something from my present experience, which is in some way the only experience that I have, in a manner of speaking. I'm at a point in the trail on my way back, where usually in the walking and talking videos, I don't arrive at this point in the trail until it's very close to the end. And I guess maybe that means I turned around sooner in my walk. But it's funny because walking in this place, in this direction now, has certain cues for me that I associate with being almost done. But I'm not almost done. I still have quite a ways to go. So I have to fight against these cues dictating, having an effect on my energy level or the arc of my monologue. Because I don't want to get into the mindset of ending imminently. The batteries are still going strong. Oh, you know what though? You know what this means? If I'm getting closer to my point of origin a little bit earlier in this video, that's all the sooner that I return to the place on the boardwalk where the chocolate was, and I can find out if it's still there or not. And if it is still there, I most certainly am going to eat some of it. And now I'm looking forward to this prospect, but there's a great uncertainty as to whether it will be there or not. There's this distinct possibility that the owner of the chocolate returned to retrieve it, or that a landscape maintenance employee passed by and threw it away, or maybe ate it themselves. Or that some other opportunistic person took advantage of the chocolate. There's a train passing on either side of me. Here's a pack of cigarettes with lots of cigarettes in them. Fortunately for me, I never developed any habit of smoking, and so that pack of cigarettes presents no temptation to me whatsoever. I've never had a positive association with smoking a cigarette, and I feel very fortunate for that. That whole thing got me thinking about addiction and vice and karma. Just like how I feel fortunate that I've never really smoked cigarettes, And so the negative, I can be aware of the negative aspects of smoking and not feel any desire to smoke them. I never felt the physiological pull of the nicotine. And I imagine that with a lot of people, like feeling addicted to anything, there's an unhappiness associated with it. Like, I imagine that the psychological effect, the immediate psychological effect of smoking a cigarette must be calming to people and must feel good, but then the overall a feeling, I imagine, contributes some psychological distress with the knowledge that you're doing something that is deleterious to your health. And so it seems, I imagine it to be a kind of suffering that's difficult to escape. Maybe it's not that way with everyone. But then, then I thought about my relationship to chocolate, and how in the past few days I've almost used chocolate just to sustain a baseline energy level. And so I wondered, what would it be like to have never developed that kind of habit surrounding chocolate, and to feel free of that variety of dependency. And thinking about why addiction exists. It's as if certain people just come into a form of equilibrium that includes a certain substance. And in order to remove that substance from their state of equilibrium, you have to stop, and you have to really experience being in a state of disequilibrium for some amount of time in order to adjust back to feeling a form of equilibrium that does not include that substance. Well, then the difficulty becomes that if that substance was keeping you in a state of equilibrium, and then you go through this difficult adjustment and finally get back to equilibrium without that substance, there's still an appeal to that substance, and that if you used it now while you're in equilibrium, you would feel really the positive benefits of it. You would feel like you'd feel better than just baseline happiness, or whatever it is that substance contributes to you. It would raise you above equilibrium. So I kind of wonder if addictions really ever totally go away. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe some people fully recover from addiction. I think some people do. I think it is possible. And it kind of seems like maybe the variety of equilibrium that you can experience without any powerful substances, because it's, and I have to add that it's not entirely possible to make a real distinction between something that's addictive and something that's just necessary in life. For instance, I could just say that I'm addicted to food, and that I have to continue eating food to have equilibrium. Everybody relies on some external substance to remain alive and healthy, and that includes food and water. And then other things are like questionable, like chocolate. Is that a substance? Is that a mood altering substance? Yeah, it has an effect on your physiological state and your mood. But is it harmful to include that in your equilibrium finding strategy? That's maybe that's the question. Maybe that's the essential question to ask about any substance or behavior that you can ask about anything. Is it harmful for me to include this substance or this behavior in my equilibrium finding strategies? Or another question to ask is, would the equilibrium that I might be able to experience without this substance or behavior be a greater equilibrium, or a more stable equilibrium, or a more beneficial equilibrium than what I can achieve with it? And that's of course a pretty debatable and subjective question. You can think of a whole range of human experience and question whether it's a natural part of life and healthy, or is it unhealthy, or are you depending on it or something? Who knows? Like sex, for instance. It seems like most people agree that it is healthy to have sex, but is there a point at which it becomes unhealthy, or a manner in which it might be practiced that could be unhealthy? It seems quite possible. But yeah, and then the whole question of what is healthy, what it means to be healthy or not, or what it means to be happy or not, is highly subjective. And as you might be familiar with, I'm someone who thinks of things in terms of emotional topographies, as some people might have a more flat topography that I would equate with a pretty steady mood, and not engaging in a lot of like highly pleasurable or stimulating experiences, but then not having a lot of very negative, unpleasant feelings, not up and down very much. But then some other people might have a more jagged topography in which they experience more highs and lows. And I can't really I don't think I can pass any judgment I can look after myself and follow my own desires and needs to maintain, to try and maintain whatever emotional topography seems desirable to me, with some realistic expectations. That is, for instance, I don't think it's possible for me to have an emotional topography that is like exponentially positive. Just like continuously getting happier and happier at an increasing, accelerating rate without ever returning back to zero. I don't imagine that to be possible. So for me, it seems to be a question of choosing between a relatively flat topography or a more jagged one. And I'll admit, I don't always go with the flat one. I might sometimes purposely choose to do something that might increase my happiness in the meantime, knowing full well that at some point I'll feel unhappy again and have to have some kind of returning to zero. And that's, that could be illustrated in my choice to eat chocolate sometimes. And I think that I'll choose to eat chocolate sometimes in order to boost my energy level, in order to perform some certain thing. Thinking that it will be beneficial for that, and then that I should, and then I can experience the lack of energy later on when I'm doing something less important or something. But unfortunately, it seems to be that almost every moment seems important. Like it's not good to operate on a deficit. That is, like, if you're using anything, something external, to boost your energy level, it's like the farther away you get from zero, the stronger the gravity of zero becomes, and the less stable you become. And the less control you'll be able to have over when that return to zero or detoxing or negative emotion is gonna come. Like if you use a drug and it feels really good, when that feeling is over, you're gonna feel the lack of you're gonna feel the opposite of whatever good you felt. And that's gonna feel bad. It's gonna feel negative. And so if you want to actually feel neutral, then you have to take that drug again. But then you're taking the drug, but you don't feel positive, you feel negative, or you feel just neutral taking the drug now. It's as if the drug is a kind of platform above equilibrium, and you've walked up some stairs and you have to keep building this platform by taking the drug to keep from falling back to equilibrium. But if you actually get attached to the good feeling, the positive feeling that you felt when you first took the drug, then you're going to have to use more of that drug to feel that positive feeling. But the more you use, and the more you use the drug in order to feel the positive feeling, the farther away from equilibrium you're going to get. It's like you're building a platform on top of the platform that you already built, and so you're higher off the ground now. And so the higher that you go, the more impactful the fall is going to be. And also the higher you go, the more unstable those platforms are, and you're going to have less control over when you fall. I mean, I'm definitely thinking about this in terms of I'm thinking about it in terms of drugs, especially like party drugs or hard drugs. But anything that strongly alters your mood, it could apply. And it could even be applied to other things. Like behaviors or other experiences or media. I found a dime and this cool clip thing. I dropped the dime right as I said that. I tried to put it in my pocket and it dropped through the cracks into the canal. Now it's property of the turtles, who don't really ascribe any value to our currency. They don't. Turtles don't participate in our consensed upon value of money. But I found this clasp thing. I don't know if I really want it though. Yeah, I guess I'll take it and put it in my junk drawer of tiny things like this. of miscellaneous nature that might be useful someday. But I also question to what extent should I go in applying this idea to everything in my life. Like, does it mean that I should never engage in anything that's pleasurable? Well, I've never been able to get through life without experiencing some pleasure, without I mean, I don't know if it's me consciously deciding to do something that's pleasurable, or if I'm behaving out of habit, and it's not. There's definitely no clear distinction. Like, there's a cake in front of you. Do you eat the cake or not? If you eat the cake, did you choose to do the cake, or did you make an unhealthy decision based on habit? Were you controlled by the cake? Were you controlled by your desire to eat the cake? Is it always unhealthy to experience pleasure? Could there be health benefits in indulging in something pleasurable like that? Even if the cake is justifiably, or like physiologically or physically, technically unhealthy to eat because it doesn't contain a lot of nutrition but contains a lot of sugar and hydrogenated oil or something. All right, we're back after a momentary lapse where I didn't notice the batteries had run out. It's just momentary, not very long. And I've been talking about how far should we go in applying the notion of healthy behavior to our lives, because it's not always clear. Like in the example of eating cake, science would tell us that science and nutrition would tell us that cake is not a health food. But maybe the occasional cake eating would produce pleasure, and the pleasure could be somehow beneficial to our overall health. Or if it in a social situation, the social bonding experience of eating cake together would have overall beneficial effects. It's really unclear, and also it may be just unuseful now to even apply, to even look at everything through this completely rational metric of how healthy it is, because at some point if you never get to experience pleasure for the sake of being perfectly healthy, then you're in a state that you're probably in a state of disequilibrium. But I suppose the measure of health is being able to maintain equilibrium by means that are sustainable over a long period and don't have negative effects. Like having good family relationships seems like a sustainable source of positive feelings. I suppose, but then I wonder. Sometimes I wonder what that might be dependent on. Things that we might not notice all the time. Like if your positive familial relationships might, if that's somehow dependent on like a lot of wealth, then it seems likely that there may be some form of exploitation happening indirectly. If this, like, what are the sources of this wealth, and is it having a deleterious effect elsewhere? Or maybe I think we imagine something like meditation as being a healthy, sustainable practice of maintaining emotional equilibrium, mental equilibrium. But is there a point where is there a point when that becomes unhealthy? If we're a total meditating monk and don't interact with the world in any other way? I don't know. I feel like I've gone off into a pretty unuseful area of pontificating here, and I just want to bring the attention back to the current situation, which in my mind there's a moment of truth as quickly approaching, where I'm going to find out whether or not that bag of chocolate is still sitting there on the boardwalk or not. And I'm mentally preparing myself to, if it is there, eat some of it in a celebratory manner and enjoy the stimulating effects it will have on me. Or in the event that it's not there, I'm preparing myself to feel good, to feel happy for whoever did take advantage of the chocolate, assuming that somebody did take advantage of it and eat some, and feel appreciative of my not partaking in that chocolate, because I'm well aware that its stimulating effects will not be permanent, and it will only kind of put off my own experience of having to deal with the unpleasantness of my bodily sensations. It'll just put off the crash and not be especially healthy overall. And so if it's not there, I can appreciate I'll appreciate my not eating it, which it's funny, it almost seems like I'm engaging in positive thinking here. That doesn't seem entirely realistic, because I'm prepared to think about the positive aspect of whichever scenario turns out to be the case. You know, if I plan to be happy if it is there and eat it, then logically then I should feel a concordant unhappiness if it's not there. Or if I'm going to be happy that it's not there, and thus it's not going, that I won't have to deal with the temptation of having to decide whether to eat it or not, then I should concordantly feel unhappy if it is there, and I have to decide whether or not to eat it, and logically then I would pass it up. So it seems that I'm maybe not thinking logically, but I'm thinking positively. And I wonder if there is any logic in positive thinking. Isn't this where it was? I think this is where it was. Oh, here it is. It's here. At least the bag is. Oh, it's here. All right. So this is what happened. The chocolate is here. I mean, I haven't opened the bag. Maybe it's possible that instead of chocolate in this bag, somebody put like I don't know, what could this be? Like actual bark, like actual tree bark. Feels like it could actually be pieces of tree bark, but nonetheless, yeah, it is actually chocolate. And as I eat this chocolate, I'm quite aware. Oh, I'm gonna go down here. No, I'm not. There's people down here. I was just trying to avoid IRL people. As I eat this chocolate, I'm aware of a possible effect it might be having on you. Of a certain immediate visceral envy, or inciting desire to find and eat some chocolate yourself. And the logical part of my mind might feel some guilt about that. The part of my mind that would view this as an unhealthy activity and that would want to only promote healthy activity, healthy strategies for maintaining equilibrium. But another part of my mind maybe feels that this is not an unhealthy strategy. To take advantage of some chocolate that would most likely otherwise go to waste. I can still feel the vague pressure in my head, but I'm distracted from it. by this chocolate. It's a very pleasurable experience in my mouth. Very pleasurable mouth feeling. Why is it so pleasurable? I'm attracted towards this sensation. And there's and a part of me is like very conscious of this moment going to end. The chocolate is running out as we speak, and I'm about to take the last bite. That was it. This is the last bite in my mouth. The last pleasurable experience of this moment. And it's going to end very soon. And then I won't be experiencing pleasure anymore. I finished swallowing the chocolate. Maybe there's a few little remnants like stuck in my gums and teeth and like around my lips and stuff that I kind of like start to collect with my tongue. But that experience is very quickly going away. And I'm curious to see how I feel afterwards. Like, am I gonna feel negativity now? Or am I going to feel a boost in my energy level? Am I waiting for the mild stimulating effects of the cocoa and the sugar to have an effect on my physiological state? I don't think I feel them yet. I don't feel them yet. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. I'm talking a little faster already. I wonder if just like knowing that I've just consumed some sugar and chocolate, I wonder if just knowing that stimulates my body to start behaving more energetically, and my mind to start acting more energetically, perhaps even in anticipation of this sugar entering my bloodstream. Knowing that the sugar will be entering my bloodstream and my brain, and also knowing that the small amount of caffeine and other similar compounds in the chocolate are going to extend the useful life of whatever adrenaline is going through my blood right now. I wonder if there's a certain bodily knowledge associated with the sensation that I just had in my mouth that triggers my body to start behaving in a more activated level, even before these chemical reactions really take place in my brain. I mean, I imagine that by now, the sugar has entered my bloodstream, and I'm trying to determine if I still feel the the pressure in my head or not. You know, it's questionable. It's questionable whether I feel the unpleasant feeling now, and even the fact that it's questionable. Like maybe I feel the head pressure, or maybe I don't. But the fact that it's questionable is different than before, when it was unquestionable, when I was definitely feeling a swelling in my, or pressure in my head. It's hard to know. It's hard to know how much change there is in my physical state and emotional state. Oh yeah, I do still feel the pressure in my head. I just noticed it now. Even like a very mild throbbing. Very mild throbbing. I do still feel it. But I'm also behaving more energetically. I feel quite certain that if there were more chocolate in that bag, I would still be eating it. I'd continue to eat it. You know, just continuing that mouth experience for longer. Why is it so pleasurable? Maybe, I mean, there's of course the evolutionary theory. That I evolved as a human to find a neurochemical reward in consuming calories. Does this mean that as long as I have this body, I'm going to be subject to these neurochemical reward systems that don't seem perfectly, that seem somewhat maladapted to the modern world? That seems to be true. I don't know of a way to restructure that part of my brain, and I also don't know how I, as a person, can restructure the modern world to be more in accordance with my neurotransmitters. Such that it would be more conducive to sustainable, healthy equilibrium. But I guess I can modify it. I can do what I can, do as much as I can to modify my, direct my behavior patterns to interface with the modern world in a way that produces relative equilibrium. Now I feel more positive than I did in around the middle of the video for sure. And of course, I wonder how different it would be if the chocolate had not been there. Or how different it would be if I had never eaten chocolate before in my life. But I suppose it's perfectly all right to let go of these questions. I still feel the same, pretty much the same bodily sensations as I felt earlier on in the video, but maybe an increasing tiredness in my legs and feet. And I'm also looking forward to ending this video and returning home where I can at the very least distract myself from any unpleasant physical sensations by eating dinner and sitting down and returning to back to equilibrium, from whatever disequilibrium I might be experiencing now. You know, it's the idea of disequilibrium is also I guess subjective and relative, because you're always just the way that you are. I'm walking past an office furniture warehouse, and I feel really compelled to take a peek in this big construction dumpster. There's a couple of office chairs, 2 or 3 office chairs, some desktops, some old encyclopedia, and a bunch of broken pallets. Oh, there's a nice basket in there. I wonder if I have any use for that basket. Do I want that? I have kind of a lot of baskets already. It seems I'm having trouble deciding because it seems kind of nice, but then there's another one. There's 2 of them. But then it's just another object. But boy, I could use a new office chair. I don't want to carry it home. But I could come back here later. I wonder if I'll discover something broken about those office chairs. I'm really this is. I'm wondering what's separating this from normal life now. Like how I'm differentiating what I'm doing from just my normal everyday life, and how I'm performing, how I'm making a video, how am I making this a video, how am I creating content, or am I just living, which would imply that I'm not putting work into the video. It's gonna end soon. The memory card's gonna fill up at any point now, I think. So I might want to end the video intentionally. You know what I can actually do? I can't look at the video camera and it won't tell me now how much space is left on the card. But if I stop this video recording, then it'll tell me how much space is left. So what I can do is make a provisional ending and then stop the recording